So this is week 3. We are in human resources. We're going to start on chapter 8. Um, Great for everybody to show up. I really do appreciate when people are actually here. Let's look. So I'm going to share my screen with everyone here, and we'll just run through this. And can everybody see what we have going on here? All right, so managing a new and diverse workforce. Now, diversity is kind of, I think diversity is a misnomer sometimes. I would like for people to, I feel like I'm yelling, sorry. I'd like for people to, understand that in the context, diversity means people of different backgrounds and different experiences. Um, and a lot of times, as far as the equal opportunity aspect of it, they're going to go with race, gender, um, maybe country of origin, things of that nature. So we know we can't discriminate on that. But I think a lot of that doesn't really matter if everybody are kind of equal in education, background, economically, and everybody thinks the same. So that's where that kind of diversity line, and in HR they don't really make much of a distinction because, like I said, legally it's race, religion, gender, um, and things of that nature. Um, so what we're going to learn in chapter 8, we're going to discuss the nature of diversity and distinguish among diversity management, equal employment opportunity, and affirmative action. Now, has anybody ever dealt with anything with affirmative action? Okay, basically what affirmative action is the government feels like, because of the past history, that certain protected groups are uh, haven't been given their chances um, in life because, like I said, of past wrongs done in history. Now, and one of the most notable ones is slavery. We had slavery, Civil War, slaves were freed, at least on paper. But then you had the Jim Crow laws, and it's only been since 67 when LBJs signed the Civil Rights Act. So that's, you can do my math here, 67, 77, 87, 97, 2007, 17. So it's at 55 years, which, on an individual level, 55 years is a long time. But to make up for, gosh, what, 200 years of not having the same opportunities, 55 years is pretty much a drop in the bucket. And so they came up with affirmative action, which is to help, families of disenfranchised groups pick themselves up. Because if you look even back in World War II, people of color who served, and there were plenty of them, couldn't even take advantage of the GI Bill. So, so if you were black and you served in the military in World War II and you did your duty like everybody else there, you came home, you were still disadvantaged. Because many families were given that step up, being able to use things like the GI Bill. And then, I mean, like I did, I'm first generation college in my family. And that's what I did. I used the GI Bill and college fund to put myself through, undergrad. And without that, I can't imagine how difficult it might be to get a leg up. Not that, that we grew up dirt poor, but we grew up rural Northeast Texas, in a farming and ranching community, small 1A school with, a couple hundred students in the entire high school. So, some of the advantages aren't really presented to you as if you were in a better economic position with your family. My dad being a truck driver, my mom, working part-time and trying to stay at home and take care of us. It's a single car family. So things like that, make it difficult on people. And this is what we're trying to push forward. So maybe one day there won't be a need for that anymore. Oh, we want to identify and describe the major dimensions of diversity in organizations. Enunciate. Discuss the primary impact of diversity on organizations, and describe individual organizational strategies and approaches to coping with diversity, and discuss the multicultural organizations. And I guess, that's what we're talking about is, I guess I didn't use the word multicultural, but I learned through my work experience that people from other cultures just don't see things the same way those of us that were born in the United States were. There's definitely a different concept of how things should go. Some places, I've worked with people, back in the day from like Aramco, which is based out of Saudi Arabia. So we had to make exceptions because they didn't like to deal with women. They had a real problem with females, and females at work and having some sort of life outside the home. And sometimes you have to, play around their different idiosyncrasies. And I don't know, does anybody know, can they still drive? Can they still not drive in Saudi Arabia?
I
When I was
believe
there in the 90s,
last I heard on the news, they still could.
they still could. When
Yeah.
I was there in the 90s, females were not even allowed to drive, and they weren't allowed to leave the home without a male family member. So hopefully things have improved in places like that.
And I think they're trying to make it to where they can travel now without a male companion.
Right. That would, that's the thing there as well. And then we look at places like Afghanistan now, who've actually went backwards since we pulled out. And that's really not a good deal. And it's hard enough. We've been, as females in the workforce, that's fully in the workforce and integrated, that's a fairly recent historical thing as well. Now we know during World War II, when the men were off fighting, women went to the factory, but as soon as the men got back, women went back home, right? And it wasn't really until the 60s that women were freed up to come to work. And a lot of it was the technological advances. Biology for a long time kept women at home because, they married young. By the time you were, by the time you were 30, you might have 5 or 6 kids or more. There was no birth control. So, and that kind of kept women locked in. So we're still trying to figure it out as a society about how to integrate men and women together. And I don't think we've quite got it right yet. We're working on it, but it's a real difficult to tackle. Okay, so our diversity exists in a group or organization when its members differ from one another along one or more important dimensions. Okay, and what are they? Sex, religion, trying to remember all the important ones here. Sexual orientation, did I say race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, and things of that nature. Age. Ageism is a bad one too, and people are sneaky with that one. because you have to, and when you have an issue like this, you have to be able to go to court and prove the reason that you were discriminated against was because Alicia was a female, or Victor was, where are you from originally, Victor? So I don't make a mistake and sound like a big dummy.
Honduras.
Honduras. So, he has to prove that they discriminated against him because he was from Honduras. They have to prove they discriminate against me because of my, age. And so the burden of proof is on the person who was wrong. And that's really, really, really hard to prove. And it becomes really expensive for you to do that. And most companies have deeper pockets than we do. Well, obviously. So, it's really hard to get in and prove that you were wrong somehow.
Mr. Diamond,
And
I think
unless-
another thing, I was reading a book called Diversity in the Workplace by Erica Brown. And in that book, she was talking about how even discrimination as subtle as people picking people from a better neighborhood. She was talking about a manager that when he picked through his applications, he will look what neighborhoods they were from. And he will
Right.
always go for the ones in the better neighborhoods. So discrimination at that, how can you prove it? You don't know it happened.
Nope. And that's, redlining is I think it's a form of redlining, which is, they're and they did that a lot of times with bank loans as well. And because they would draw the lines, and it was usually along minority populations who were poor, although, we know we have poor white people too. I I live in Okmulgee, so I guarantee you, in a county like this one, most people are on assistance. Most people are who don't have the ability to go work out of town. There are very few really good paying jobs here. We have a couple of industries, a college, and Walmart. We have a xanthan gum plant, Walmart, I think a pump company, and like OSUIT. And besides that, everything else is fast food and retail. If you don't want to go to work at McDonald's or selling phones at Cricket, you have to, head out of town, usually to the Tulsa area. So like I said, it's really difficult for people to make a living. And if you find yourself behind that 8 ball, whatever it may be, maybe you don't have a reliable transportation. Now, when you go back and when I'm doing it, if we're interviewing you, there are certain questions I can't ask. I can't ask your age or marital status or whether you have children, right? And people who are a little more savvy won't give that information up, because that, Mandy says she has, 6 kids. Well, I don't know if she does or not. I'm just, I don't know, Mandy. You just 3. Oh, that's enough. But she says she has 3 kids. Well, they're going to look at her and they're going to say, well, what happens if the kids get sick? What happens if there's a problem at school? Or is she going to be reliable enough to not have to take off of work? Now, that's not as big of a problem as it used to be. And I think post-COVID, we're able to take a lot more time off, which is a little weird because many people work from home. Like I said, my son-in-law, I don't think he's been to his office in 2 years. And so during the summer, his oldest son was able to just hang around the house with him. Didn't need a babysitter or anything like that. And that's like, I don't know if anybody pays daycare. I'm sure Mandy might. That's almost, if you don't have to pay daycare for a kid, that's almost like getting a raise, a big one. Okay, so we get changing demographics. People coming in from Honduras, a lot of immigration in the United States. That's going to change our demographics. Um, and then we want to have, increased awareness by organizations on how to improve workforce quality. And then you have, which is going to contribute to diversity. And then, of course, legislation. And then when I say legal action, we're talking about precedent. When people sue or go to court to make something happen, then that becomes the law of the land as well until it's overturned. So you'll see that when things head to the appellate court, and I believe we're in the 10th circuit here. And so if there's a decision, hi Maggie, if there's a decision that's made like in the 9th circuit, which is I think California, Arizona, places like that, it doesn't always affect us here either. And so it has to go that next step, which is to the Supreme Court, which they don't take every case. They take a very, very, very small number of cases compared to how many people are trying to see them. Let me get Maggie down here. And Linda Spradley, there she is.
Yes, so sorry.
Oh no, you're good. And Deb. I just want to make sure I have everybody here. Deb, aren't you in the 7:30 class?
I am.
Oh, okay.
I'll come back at 7:30.
No problem. I mean, you can hang out. We don't mind.
Nah, I'll come back, okay?
This is actually the Cool Kids Club.
Is that what this is?
This is what that is, yeah. All right, we'll see you in a little bit.
All right, bye.
And then globalization, that's going to change how we do business too. As over the last few years, the amount of globalization that has happened, the outreach of other areas has really become, I'm amazed by it. I remember, I'm old enough to remember a time where, before email, and if you had to make an international call, how much money that cost, and then getting things shipped over, from another country. And now, man, we get things in from China all the time. I can send an email any time of day or night, anywhere around the world. These things have made it easier to do business with people of different cultures. I mean, I remember having to deal at some time with the time difference overseas. And so that you have to get up at 4 a.m. to have a conference call with somebody because of their time differences. Okay. Equal employment opportunity diversity management. So equal employment opportunity, treating people fairly and equitably, taking actions that do not discriminate against people in protected classes on the basis of some illegal criterion. Okay, and diversity management places heavy emphasis on recognizing and appreciating differences among people at work and attempting to provide accommodations for those differences to the extent that is feasible and possible. One of the problems that, one of the things we faced as a problem back in the day was the language barrier. Although English is used all around the world to do business, just imagine it, how different English is just in the United States from one area to the other. And then imagine, English as a second language in places like, India or Saudi Arabia, where, language is taught, but it's still sometimes difficult to communicate because we're not on the same English page. In fact, I don't think we're even on the same English page as England. You know, the place the name language is named from.
And that is so true, because I was at the pharmacy and a simple little thing as how to swipe your card. This lady was trying to explain it to a lady from India how to do it. Something as simple as that was so complicated. It was
Yep.
because she was understanding English one way and the lady couldn't explain it the way she understood it. It was just, yeah, it's
And you know, and then like I said, and I've run into that, you know, from East Coast to West Coast. Although West Coast is not too bad. Places, you know, there's no such thing as a California accent. Like there is, you know, you can tell the difference when someone is from Texas, or even the difference in the southern dialects between Texas and we used to live in North Carolina. They spoke a whole different language over there. As far they used words I'd never even heard before. The first time somebody said something about a hose pipe, I had no idea what they were talking about. I had to have it explained to me that that's a garden hose. So, so the
hose pipe. Okay. Wow.
and so it's definitely a different environment. And let me tell you, the barbecue is different there as well. Barbecue is way different. You know, first time I ordered barbecue, I was like, what are you serving me here? Where's the red sauce, you know, that makes you sweat when you eat it? Barbecue was vinegar based.
I think I was in Virginia at one point. We were driving through and we stopped at one of the steakhouse, and we wanted the fried chicken steak. So here in Texas, we usually get it with white gravy. And we told the servant we want white gravy, and he looked at us like, what are you talking about? What white gravy? We don't have white gravy here. I was like, I thought this is a steakhouse. We end up going with brown gravy. And I was like, we still in United States, but apparently a few states away, and even the cuisine changes.
I had a friend from England, and they had no idea what biscuits and sausage gravy was.
Oh, wow.
And I'm trying to explain that it's like a scone with a white gravy. It was like explaining, you know, rocket science to them, because they just didn't get it.
Because I think biscuits in England is like the cookie that you eat with your tea.
Yep, cookies, exactly. And they were like, biscuits and sausage gravy. Why would you do that? That sounds disgusting. Also, you know, here in the South, catfish is a way of life. You know, oh, did Alicia just snore her nose? But you know, catfish is big down here. How many restaurants do you know have Friday all you can eat catfish, and catfish this and catfish that? When I was up North Dakota, they don't eat catfish, and they consider catfish just a nasty bottom feeder. And I've watched them that if they would catch one, they would just throw a bank, you know, like we would a gar. I don't know if anybody's ever caught gar, been gar fishing. And but once again, that's the thing in Louisiana, they catch gar, cook it, and eat it, where we just kill them and throw them away here. So as I said, just different areas.
Well, their alligators or crocodiles are good too in Louisiana.
What are they?
The alligators or crocodile in Louisiana.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I like gator. If you never ate snake either.
I didn't have that yet. I don't think I will.
But well, also some of the you know, we live in Oklahoma with a high population of natives, but when I was up north, there were real reservations like you see on TV. I mean, the real deal. And a lot of times when they would cook, they used every single part of the animal. And that was something that, you know, things we would normally eat, They were making sure it got used. You know, first time I went to a big supper, and the entire cooked cow's head was on the table, and it was just normal for them. So, you know, once again, culture can be different, you know, from state to state. You know, like I said, so you see how extreme it can get from country to country. I haven't eaten dog. I don't eat dog though. I don't go the Korean way, although I do love kimchi, but I won't eat dog. So distinction between the two has okay. Distinction between affirmative action, diversity management. A narrow pursuit of diversity will not be accepted offense for affirmative action without strong evidence that is the best way to proceed. Now, and we're talking about Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It acknowledges differences among people and makes reasonable accommodations for those differences. And that even goes to people with, you know, with some sort of handicap. You can make reasonable accommodations. You know, and we see that all the time because most businesses are required to have some way, if you're wheelchair bound, you know, that you have to have wide enough doors. You have to have, you know, be able to get in a bigger stall in the bathroom. You have to, you know, so reasonable accommodations don't just stop at you being an employee, just being a person, you know, out and about. We see the handicapped spaces. I don't like the word handicap, but I guess that's the best we do at Walmart, and that's what I'll get on to somebody. I'll get upset with them if I see someone without a handicap placard parked in one of those spots. You know, I'll shake my finger at them because that's not good, not cool. Okay, diversity between age. The average age of U.S. worker is gradually increasing, and part of that is we are not replacing the population here in America as fast as we should. They say right now to keep the population stable, people would have to have 2.1, the average of 2.1 kids apiece per family. Right now, we're averaging about 1.6 children per household. So we don't have, so you have an older population in the workforce and are not being replaced by, you know, younger generations as we go along. And so we're, you know, the workforce is actually, the demographics of age are going to change. And a lot of older people, you know, are not going to work, are going to remain in the workforce. And sometimes just out of necessity as well, because retiring is very expensive and Social Security doesn't get it.
What is the ratio of, like, compared to the retiree and the people that actually work? I think a couple years ago it was like 5 or 6 people per person.
You know, I'm not up to date on that. I mean, that sounds probably, and those numbers, if it's just been a few years, remain, a lot of these numbers remain mostly stable, and they change in small increments over time. So, and that's something I might have to look up and let you know about. Okay, so more people working beyond the retirement age just a few years ago. You know, Dr. Kirk, who's come back as a consultant, who used to be the president of the university, I think he's in his 70s. And I'm not, and he had a nice retirement. He had a cabin somewhere and went trout fishing every day. Gender, so we've heard the term glass ceiling before, a barrier that keeps females from advancing to top management positions. Now, even that, how many people have heard, I don't remember what the last number I heard was, that women make, was it 79 cents on the dollar, maybe a little more or less, depending on which study, on than a man. So, which is, if a woman is in the same position, doing the same job as a male, it is 100% illegal to pay them less. But you take in things, education, years experience, and so forth. So if all those things turn out to be equal, then like I said, it is illegal to pay a woman less. I mean, and one of the things that seems a little weird to me, if you could get away with that, then you would have an all-female workforce almost, right? I'd say myself 21% right off the bat. So so it's a little more complicated than that. I think the glass ceiling theory is starting to lose a little attraction. It's just, I think women make, and when they give you that number, 79 cents on the dollar, that's an aggregate. That's if you take all the men in the workforce and average out their pay, and all the women in the workforce average out their pay, there is a huge gap.
But that's,
But
that's kind of disputable, Mr. Diamond, because coming from production, I've been to different production facilities and even in restaurants, a lot of the hiring managers, HR managers are female. So it is disputable as to females getting paid less now than men because a lot of the women doing the hiring, a lot of the managers are female. They're the ones sending out how much a person is going to get paid when they come on board. So I don't know that I guess depends on the field you're talking about, but from the fields I've been coming from, the majority that handle the management are female.
and yeah, and they are. And there's kind of been a turn there, like in the medical industry. The medical industry is pretty much majority female. More female doctors are coming up. Nurses are dominated, by females. So that's it's well over, and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it's in colleges. There are more females going to graduate from college now than men.
We don't even have to go too far. We can look at the vet class. I just came out of the vet class and transferred to this one. Almost the entire class was female. When I left, there was only one male left in that class, and everyone else was female. So, yeah, it's a trend. It's taking a turn. Yeah.
But and still, like I said, they take it in aggregate. They take total of men and total of women. They average out. Women make less. But when they do a multivariate analysis of it, men are more likely to work in more dangerous jobs that will pay more. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to move for a job. They're more likely to work more hours. And so when you start doing multivariate analysis, that wage gap starts to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. I had some lawyer friends, and what they ran into was when you had male and female lawyers, at some point, many of the female lawyers would at some point leave the workforce for an extended period of time because to start a family. There's a biological component, which is men can make children up until the day before we die, right? Or theoretically. But there's a biological clock there for women where they have a limited time to start a family and raise them. That was, I knew a guy in Tulsa. He married a young lady like half his age, and he was 60 and had a new baby in the house. And so that doesn't sound fun. I don't think that was a smart decision. I don't want to be 60 in nappies.
I thought you were talking about my uncle there for a minute. I thought you ran into my uncle.
Could have been. We had a neighbor for a long time. I think he had 14 kids running around. And I always told him he was running around the country because they were anywhere between Canada and here. And I always told him he was running around setting up franchises.
Were they Italians?
No. Wow. I'm not touching that.
Oh my God.
There's even places I won't go.
The positive side is when they're gonna get out, they will have so many kids to help out. They won't have to hire anyone.
Wow. Yeah. Well, but even in Italy, don't they have a large senior population, or did before COVID? That the number of seniors outmatch people in the workforce, and that's going to be a real problem here in America too, because as people start to age out and we don't have enough people to replace them, it's going to put a strain on not only on the job market but on our social security system.
I don't know about Italy. That's probably something you have to look into, because from all the stuff I was seeing in the news during COVID, they lost a lot of seniors over there because of it. A lot of seniors. So the numbers might be different now.
It was bad in Italy during COVID. It was really bad. So ethnicity is the ethnic composition of a group or organization. Can't disability. Perception about an employee with a disability depends on the origin, nature of disability, and its aesthetic aspects. Now, there are times, that you can use disability to not hire someone because they're not physically capable of doing the job. I can't in good conscience hire a guy in a wheelchair to work inside a warehouse, right? So, and there's a reasonable accommodations, but there's also what the job mandates. And if the job mandates, being able to lift 30 pounds over your head and climb a ladder all day, there really isn't a reasonable accommodation. So that's one of those touchy things where you have to be real careful with it. There's just, but if they can reasonably do the job as described, despite any handicap, then you can't use that at all. And that's a good way to get sued or get in trouble. Okay, we have sexual orientation, religious diversity, single parents, okay, special dietary preferences. And a lot of that special dietary runs into the religious diversity. I know, I've known some Jewish people who it has to be kosher. When you go out to eat, many times I've seen them not eat because we're not at a kosher restaurant. They'll sit around and have coffee, but they won't actually, partake. If you're vegan, which God help you if you are, because that just sounds horrible to me. But to each their own. Differences in political viewpoints and Native American standing. So, but none of these should come up in an interview. I can't ask someone if they're gay in an interview. I can't ask them what the religious is. I can't ask them, are they married or do they have any children? That's a good way, to get busted. And, now many people do. When I was in an oil company, they would ask these questions, and I used to say, you can't ask these questions, and the owner of the company did not care and still hasn't been sued, which is really weird to me. And
Well,
that, once again, go
Mr.
ahead.
Diamond, the National Bureau of Economic Research, they did an experiment, right, on sending out resumes with people with white last names, African last names, and they came out with a conclusion that people with white sounding name got 50% more calls back than people with African last names. And so there is a subtle discrimination. It's just really hard to prove that it's happening.
Well, and and I hate to say, there's like I said, once again, you've got to walk that fine line of saying, what a ethnic sounding name might be, as opposed to what a white sounding name is. But I mean, the difference between, my last name Diamond and yours Padilla, it's pretty obvious that somewhere along the line, you either, you're from a Spanish speaking country, or you marry, or if you're a female married into a Spanish speaking
Right.
family. So, and then although it was real weird, I think that gap is closing because people are starting to name their kids differently. You know, and ethnicity really doesn't matter. Although back in the mid 2000s, I tell this story every once in a while. When I was teaching high school, Brittany was a real popular name. There were a lot of Brittany's around, and I had a class of 15 algebra students with 5 Brittany's. And so, and yes, they were all Caucasian. So I you know, I don't know what that means, but you know, I guess that's the difference between naming your kid Brittany or naming your kid, you know, I say Lakeisha. I have a cousin named Lakeisha, so I can say that. But you know, that gives gives them a clue on what your ethnic background may be. Okay, diversity and social change. Diversity in organizations both facilitate and is facilitated by social change in the environment. So, and we see it all the time. As we move on, as a society, we've been more accepting of people of different backgrounds. My uncle, he's been gone for a long time, one of my favorite uncles, he was gay, and but he kept it really, you know, in the 70s and 80s, you know, you didn't tell a whole lot of people. Now we're a lot more accepting of things like that, which I think is fine. You know, that's a good thing. You know, but you shouldn't have to. I don't think you should have to hide who you are in a society just to make other people comfortable. Their discomfort doesn't have anything to do with you. That's all about them. Unless, of course, you're Poland, and then you know you should be able to just discriminate against the Polish all the time. She's not listening. Okay, there she is. Okay, pay attention now. Diversity and competitiveness. Diversity can be a source of competitive advantage in the marketplace, and it can also be a source of disadvantage. So you, like I said, once again, you have to be real careful. I will tell you though, on the gender front, in sales, women usually outpace the men by a far greater amount. When I was the oil company, I was a heck of a salesman. You know, I could talk the talk, but I got my butt kicked by female oil salesmen all the time. They made numbers that were, you know, just crazy. And same thing. So, you know, like I said, once again, there's that flip that we were talking about is, you know, heck, I think the last couple of cars I've bought were female car salespeople, because female car salesman kind of doesn't match, does it? But you know,
Well, Mr. Diamond, I
as-
mean, in the oil industry, for example, it's mostly men. You put a female out there, you ain't got no chance, buddy. They're gonna look at that female before they look at you.
nope. A little makeup, a skirt, and a set of heels, man. I didn't have the legs to pull it off.
Exactly. There you go.
It's like, sir, we were distracted with the object in front of us. We couldn't
Exactly.
concentrate on the job.
Can I sell you? Oh yeah. Well, you didn't hear what I was selling yet. I don't care. Okay, six arguments. Look at time have been proposed for how diversity contributes to competitiveness. There's a cost argument, a resource acquisition argument, marketing, creativity, and problem solving, and then we also have system flexibility argument. Now, there's also that that double-edged sword where people in certain industries hire minorities. You know, I mean, And because they know they can pay their entire workforce less because, they're Hispanic, you know, um, lawn care companies, fencing companies, a lot of construction companies. I know when I was in the oil field, um, I had to work on my Spanish really heavy because a lot of those guys that worked on a pipeline came from Spanish speaking countries. And that's because, I think the companies felt like they could pay them less.
And that is so
Hotel
true.
or-
That happened to
What's
my
that?
dad. My dad went to a job. He tried to give them how much he wanted, and they told him why should they have to pay that when they can hire somebody else to work for less. So it is true.
I used to work in a hotel and the owner would just run over the Hispanic ladies working in housekeeping and give them like 5 cents raises, even though they deserved way more.
And that still goes on, and that's what we're fighting against here. That's what we're trying to work against. And like I said, it's not as prevalent as it was at one time. You go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it was a real issue. But societal change takes time. And many times it has to happen organically, and it can't be forced by legislation. It can be prodded and moved along, but you have to change over time people's mindsets. Like I said, when I was growing up, biracial couples were an oddity. And now it's perfectly acceptable, and nobody gives it a second thought. And like I said, that didn't happen overnight. No matter what the legislation said, when they said back in the 60 years ago that that they made it legal for people to marry outside their race, which used to be illegal. It took decades for that to become an acceptable practice. And so, like, societal change is slow, super slow. Okay, conflicts. Okay, so when individuals think that a person has been hired, promoted, or fired owing to his or her diversity status, people have heard the term, "Oh, you're just a diversity hire," or they were just a diversity hire. That's ugly. That's ugly, ugly, ugly. And once again, that's not the reflection many times of the hiring practices. That's a reflection of the person who has that opinion. And so I always think you should always hire the best person for the job, no matter what they look like, no matter who they're married to, or who they choose to spend their life with or love. That's those things should be off limits. And like I said, I think it takes time to move past that. But I can say we do live in one of the most, or probably the most racially diverse countries in the world. I don't, there, most places aren't as diverse as we are. Let's see. So misunderstandings.
Brazil is next.
Yeah, Brazil. That's a high crime place though, and they're crowded. That's I hear it's beautiful in some places, but I hear it's awful dangerous as well. And it becomes, and like I said, not all societies are accepting. You places like Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia as these extreme examples. But there are some places where it's a little less obvious. I think Japan is one, have become more accepting over the years. There was a time that you were not really accepted in Japan if you weren't Japanese, and they had a very narrow view of what Japanese was, because in most countries, I'm going to use Poland for example. If I immigrate to Poland, Maggie, will I ever be considered Polish? by any.
You have to be fluent in Polish.
Yeah.
And plus you're American, they will love you.
Will they now? But you can move into America and be considered American, no matter, no matter what your background is. And most countries don't see that. They don't have that kind of thought process. And so, all right. So, oh, I like fear, distrust, and individual prejudice. That's a big one, and we can't control what goes on in somebody else's head. We just can't. As much as we would like to, it's just not happening. But guys, it is 7 o'clock. You did great. As long as YouTube is fair, we'll get this video up. And if you want, I will send out these PowerPoint slides as well. Everybody want those? Okay.
That's fine.
Any
Quick question
Yes, ma'am.
about the word find. I'm not sure, is it me? I cannot find 2 words.
I will look at it. Which 2 words? Let me write it down here.
Primary election and exclusionary rule. I've been trying to find them for past 3 days and I'm going crazy here.
All right. I'll probably have to do the thing myself. I haven't done it in a long time because but I will take a look at it and I will look for exclusionary rule and primary election.
I tried to run it a couple times. I found exclusion, but with the X, and that's it. I don't know where's the rest.
I will look it up. Any more questions, comments, concerns?
And I emailed my word find to you.
Okay. All right. I will look at that. Let me stop sharing here. Don't want to overshare, right? Let me look at my email. While I'm doing that, anyone else? Okay, here's the deal, and I'll show you real quick. Let me share this screen again, just so Natisha can see it.
Okay.
There's the email you just sent me, right?
Yes.
I don't see anything attached to it. Do you?
As I sent an attachment.
I don't see anything attached to it, but you're sending it through Canvas, right?
No, I'm sending it through my email to, I guess, to your, is
All right.
that, let me see, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, guess what? Whatever email you send out to us when we get them, I'm sending that email.
Oh, okay, create a separate email. Hold it. Did I actually see it? Here it goes. Yeah, I don't think I hit share. If you see that here, there's no attachment to it at all.
Okay. It
So-
says, I guess I'm sending it via Canvas.
Right. Don't send it in Canvas. Just compose a new email and then send it to sdiamond@communitycarecollege.edu.
Okay,
and,
wait a minute.
add the attachment.
Is Diamond any periods in the middle or?
Nope, just S Diamond, Sierra Delta, Indigo, Alpha. I don't remember the rest of my phonetic.
I gotcha.
At communitycarecollege.edu.
Okay.
And then, like I said, just send it separately. And that's probably why I haven't got it yet, is because I have got attachments through Canvas, and then sometimes I don't get them. I don't know why. Like that one you just saw.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Okay, Victor wants PowerPoint. I will send those out via email. What I'll do is I'll send out all of them at one time, from chapter 1 through whatever the last chapter in this book is.
Okay.
And that way you have access to them. So any other questions or concerns?
Professor Diamond, did you get it?
I will look as soon as I stop recording.
Okay.